Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. This is episode number 83. We are on the Tyler Boyd episode, as us Bengals fans will call it.
Sure.
I am Mac. That is Kyle. How's it going, Kyle? It's been a little while.
It has. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. We decided to do a special episode today because obviously there's no new Marvel movie, there's no new Marvel show, so you're probably wondering why is this showing up in my podcast feed or live on Laughing Place YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and all of the fun
places,
stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, we're doing a special episode because there's just a lot of Marvel news to catch up on. There was all of a sudden about a week or like a 10-day span of just a whole lot of stuff dropped very quickly. So we decided to jump in here. And we do have actually some Marvel content to talk about, which I don't know if
I've seen some of it.
You have seen some of it. Okay. All right. So let's jump right in. And of course, we are going to have our games. Our How Much Is That Cameo? We're going to have a fun draft later with a very special guest joining us. But let's jump into our some of that news, and we'll start off with the two Marvel Studios Assembled that hit Disney Plus since the last time we talked to you guys, which our last episode was about Echo. So naturally, we got Assembled, the making of Echo. Is this the one that you got to see? Did you
No,
see?
watch the other one.
That's fine. I don't actually have a whole lot to say about this one because, as I've mentioned previously, Assembled has kind of become pretty formulaic and hits the same notes for the most part. It's still interesting to watch if you're a big fan and you want to see, some of the actors talk about their experiences, which was cool with this one. They shine the light on Alakwa Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio quite a bit. I think to me, this one just left out a lot of the interesting things about Echo, meaning the Marvel Spotlight banner, dropping all the episodes at once, both on Disney Plus and on Hulu, the first TVMA rating. They didn't touch on any of that. So would have been interesting to hear some more about that, some of the decision-making behind it, but also, kind of understandable for the most part that they would steer away from those topics.
Yeah, no, these are extended EPKs. So that's basically what they feel like. And sometimes that's, there's interesting stuff in there, but moving on to the other one that I did watch was one for the Marvels, and I'm like, turned to Beck afterwards. I'm like, well, they've done it again. They managed to avoid the two most interesting topics.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that second one then, because I thought that one was stronger. Especially,
I knew the reason that I watched it was 2 words: Amon Villani.
Right. Yeah. No. And that's we'll start right there because Amon Villani has been, a ray of sunshine in the MCU over the last couple of years. And a couple of things are my favorite parts of this Assembled, the making of the Marvels. One is her showing around Carol Danvers' ship and showing off all the details and stuff that you could never possibly see while watching the movie. So it's crazy that they go into so much detail on this incredible set. And then my second favorite thing about this Assembled was what looked like just like a normal interview with Amon Villani. And then she kind of gets distracted and looks back and goes, wait, are there cats? And then looks back at the camera all excited. So, you kind of get that energy pouring through from her there.
Yeah, that was fun. And it was also cool. I feel like to a certain degree, you hear a lot from when they interview the directors and stuff, kind of talking about their relationship with Marvel growing up and stuff. But I just lost her name, but I felt like her story about growing up being a nerd and wanting this to direct a Marvel movie. And I thought that really shined through as well, just as much as
Nia DaCosta, right?
Yeah.
She seemed to be very she's not as much in the spotlight for obvious reasons, but she does seem to have every bit that same energy as Amon Villani. So it was cool to get to hear from her too. Tiana Paris was really fun. It seemed like she was having all kinds of fun shooting this movie. And then I will point out too, because Brie Larson, takes a lot of heat for a lot of various reasons, for the most part that I don't understand. But she she has a very like emotional moment during this where she's talking to the cast and crew as they're about to wrap film. I think it's like as they're starting their final day of filming. And it was really cool to see that, so like to see how invested these actors are in these projects, and how close it is to them personally. It was really cool to see.
And it's always fun to see the volume. And I felt like it was used slightly differently here than we've seen on like the Mandalorian ones, where it feels like it's just the screen and then like one little prop, but having that huge ship in front of the volume, I thought was really interesting and cool to see.
And a lot more wire work in the volume as well, that probably more so than any other movie or show. So yeah, that was fun. Both of those are streaming on Disney Plus right now. Again, Echo one pretty cookie cutter, but I thought the Marvels one was more fun and interesting. So
and arrived on the same day as the movie on Disney Plus without warning. It makes the most sense, but it's taken them this long to do that.
Yeah, and that was especially because the Echo one kind of just dropped at random a few weeks after the show. So yeah, there's no really planning for Marvel Studios Assembled. Just keep an eye out for it.
I do wonder, as we talk about kind of these cuts to Disney Plus, whether Assembled would be one of those things that they just kind of like let go by the wayside. But at the same time, I feel like they're probably not that hard to make. Like, I don't think they're really doing that much extra other than, for lack of a better term, assembling it. Because I feel like a lot of these interviews and stuff are things that they're going to want to use for other press things anyway. So I don't know if it really costs them that much to create this piece of content. So I'm kind of mixed on whether I think it's something that will go away as a cost-cutting measure or continue because it's nearly free content.
Right. I mean, they're shooting this as they're just shooting, working on the movie. It's just all the behind the scenes stuff. So you're right. It's not really costing them much or, anything at all. So we should mention too, I think we probably talked about the date during the last podcast, but as you alluded to briefly there, The Marvels is also now streaming on Disney Plus. So go and check that out as well. If
you missed it in theaters, which
if you missed it in theaters, or if you're like me and you saw it in theaters twice and still watched it on Disney Plus the day it dropped, if for nothing else, then one of the most exciting post-credit scenes in the history of the MCU, I think.
That they won't say a word about in the Assembled, because that's what they do.
Right. Yeah. I kind of wish they could have explored that a little bit, but.
Well, also, if we're going to do it, like slight spoilers here, but they talk about Bree handing it over to the next generation, and it's like perfect lead in to talk about that last scene before the post-credit scene.
Right. Yeah. That's true too.
Nope. Couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, that's true. And we might talk about some of those characters a little bit more a little later on. But let's get into the next piece of news. Like I said, there were a few pretty big pieces of news over the last couple of weeks. And the first happened on the night of the big game. We got the trailer. I think we were expecting this at this point, but we got the trailer for what we now know is called Deadpool and Wolverine. What were your first thoughts?
Well, I have a question for you, because I assume you are actually watching the Super Bowl, right?
The big game. Yeah, I was.
We're an official sponsor. It's okay. You were so what did they show as an actual ad spot? Was it just a few seconds of it? Because I imagine, like, watching that trailer, you couldn't even show the full thing.
Oh, no, they did not show that whole trailer. No, yeah, it was one of those, like, I don't know if it was 15 seconds or 30 seconds, but it was
online
like a
now.
quick spot, and then just said, yeah, the full trailer online now. And of course, I immediately muted my TV, pulled out my laptop, and watched it 3 times. I actually missed like almost a full drive just watching the trailer. So yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, I guess you didn't get to it.
No, I didn't. What are your thoughts? Watch the game. I was stressed not watching the game even, and like I have no idea what's happening right now. It's different if there's two teams I don't care about, and it's not like I'm the biggest Chiefs fan, but I do live in Missouri and I have friends that are hardcore fans, and I did think it'd be cool if they went back to back. So I was somewhat invested, and because of that, I can only imagine what it's like for you as an actual fan of a team to watch games, especially a couple years ago. So I sympathize with you on that, but that is why I did not watch the game. But I did watch this trailer as soon as I saw that it went up, and I mean, it feels like a Deadpool movie. It seems
Yeah.
it's got the things you'd want from it, and I have so many questions. But no, it was cool. I think I don't know. There's so many rumors and stuff that I don't know if we discussed it as a theory or whether we saw it elsewhere. But the TVA element, I feel, is something that did come up.
That we've talked about, you mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if you and I had talked about it, the TVA
Okay.
as a possible thing for Deadpool or what, but I feel like I've
Yeah.
heard that before this trailer came out.
I may have brought it up. There were rumors of the TVA being involved in this movie for quite a while. And by the way, I mean, I don't know how many questions I can answer because let me ask you this one real quick. Have you or have you not yet watched Deadpool 2?
Just go ahead. I don't care. I have not watched it yet.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. First of all, I want to say we won't get into all the details of this trailer because this is a movie that we're probably gonna have to leave some details out of because it's Deadpool. It's gonna be an R-rated movie, as the first two were.
It is new for Disney.
Yes, as they point out in the trailer, which please just give me more of that. I mean, we get some fighting in front of like a crumbled 20th Century Fox logo in the trailer, which is amazing. I can't wait to see all of the jokes that they're going to throw into this movie. But yeah, this does pick up after Deadpool 2, and mild spoilers for Deadpool 2 here. Listen, Cable is involved in that movie, so time travel gonna be involved. Wade does some things that would make the TVA not happy in that movie. So TVA getting involved makes a lot of sense. I also have a theory regarding the TVA and the larger MCU that we can talk about with our next piece of news because it kind of all ties together. But yeah, I really like
it's
the
all
story.
connected. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in classic MCU fashion. Not recent MCU fashion, but classic MCU fashion. But yeah, I like the story that they're building here with this, with the TVA being involved to bring Wade into, our 616 timeline, or depending on who you ask, our 1999 timeline. Yeah, there were a lot of things I liked about this trailer. There's a lot of fun little quick Easter eggs, maybe. And I'll run through a few of them real quick too. And you can stop me if you have any questions or anything, or if you want to wait until the end, however you want to do it. But we get a brief glimpse of a character from behind that looks like maybe it's Charles Xavier, but maybe a little bit different. A lot of fans are speculating this is perhaps Cassandra Nova, the sort of anti-Charles Xavier. We get a look at another interesting character from behind, and it's Logan, but it looks to be a different version of Logan, perhaps Patch, as you see his white tuxedo. We get what looks to be Alioth. I think we're in the void at some point, and Alioth is picking off some TVA agents. Lady Deadpool seems to have been spotted in this trailer too, so that's exciting.
Does she go by any other names?
We're not going to talk about that. We also see a completely out of left field character actor reprising his role, is just Aaron Stanford reprising his role seemingly as Pyro, who, so they say you're the bad guy. You might remember him from X2 and I believe Last Stand as well, but I've kind of blocked that movie out of my memory. And then in one of the final shots where right before you finally get to see Wolverine in that blue and yellow costume, if for only a split second, we see Wade laid out on the ground. Next to him is a copy of Secret Wars #5. So an obvious nod to the eventual Avengers film that we're going to get in the MCU. Also a comic book cover that has Doctor Doom on the front. So you feel like they're just kind of playing with Marvel fans there. So a lot of really cool stuff in this trailer. Did any of it stand out to you? Did I kind of drop anything on you there that you feel like you need to need me to elaborate on?
Well, see, so I had read your article on laughingplace.com
Mhm.
about this. So no, these things
Great.
were not new to me. But no, I those are things that kind of I didn't really pay that much attention to while watching it, but I do think it's interesting that you dove into it. But as just watching it as I guess intended, just kind of on surface level, I thought it
Right.
was really fun and it'll be cool to see because I mean, it's hard to know whether this film is just going to be, you know, pure playful fun or whether this could have super implications. Like the fact that there's, comics called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. You're
Right.
like everyone's saying, how is Marvel gonna like fix this? It's like, well, this would be an interesting way to do that. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But it's funny. I was thinking about how many like I don't know if I'd call them loose ends, but like things like kernels that have been dropped in the MCU in the past few years that haven't like been followed up on yet. And
Mhm.
today, I saw the Harry is an uncle trending on Twitter for Harry Styles, and I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
his niece is Gamora.
Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
see,
Zoe
you
Saldana.
forgot that happened, but he is Thanos' brother, and so his niece is
Right, right, right.
Gamora.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's like how crazy it is. Like, how many years ago did that happen? And we're just like, oh yeah, that that
Yeah.
that exists. Or Roy Kent is Hercules. Like,
Hercules. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many, and that's what a lot of fans have been not really, I guess complaining, I guess is the right word. That people are kind of getting antsy for that next, assembly of characters as opposed to these other sort of branches that we've been getting. So yeah, we will see. Um, Deadpool and Wolverine, as we know, is the title now. There's a really fun poster out as well. July 26th, that is the next big MCU movie. Really excited for it. It looks super fun. It looks, like you said, it looks like a Deadpool movie, which is very exciting. Especially if you loved those first two movies, which we're going to get Kyle on seeing that second one as soon as possible.
I'll watch it on Disney Plus maybe this weekend.
There you go. Yeah, and again, they both of them are streaming on Disney Plus, so you can check those out. All right, let's move on to our next piece of news. And well, speaking of things that happened quite a while ago that you might have forgotten about, we did a draft, which we talked about this a little bit before we started recording today. And did you realize that this draft was over 2 years ago? Like we did this, or almost 2
No.
years ago, I should say. Yeah, this was in 2022. We did this draft, and this was a fan cast draft that we did with Mike C, our Star Wars editorial director here at Laughing Place. Big Fantastic Four fan. Let me run through our lineups real quick. I think this would be fun to revisit because again, we fan casted the Fantastic Four back in 2022. And
All I remember about that draft is that I had the John Cena drop.
well, yeah, and spoiler alert, we didn't get a single one right.
Oh.
But yeah, we'll start with Kyle's. Kyle had Zachary Levi as Reed Richards, Evan Rachel Wood as Sue Storm, Jake from State Farm as Johnny Storm, and John Cena as the Thing. I had Jack Quaid as Reed Richards, Emily Blunt as Sue Storm, Zac Efron as Johnny Storm, and Ross Marquand as the Thing. And then Mike had Freddie Prinze Jr. as Reed Richards, January Jones as Sue Storm, Aaron Paul as Johnny Storm, and David Harbour as the Thing. So I think we made a lot of good choices there. Again, none of them were right because on February 14th, Valentine's Day, we got the news of the Fantastic Four cast officially. We had kind of known for a while, and I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but Pedro Pascal is now officially Reed Richards. Vanessa Kirby will play Sue Storm. Joseph Quinn will play Johnny Storm, and Eben Moss-Bacharach will play Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. What are your initial thoughts on this casting?
I don't have many opinions about the casting. I don't know a lot about Fantastic Four. I've actually don't think I've seen any of the incarnations of the movies or
okay.
read any of the comics. So I don't have strong opinions on that. What was more interesting to me was the art direction that was
Mhm.
implied with the poster and stuff. So why don't you talk
Yeah,
about the casting and then we'll come back to my
sure.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this when we talked about Pedro. We're on a first name.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, but Pedro Pascal being Reed Richards, I think was. I think a lot of fans are not super thrilled with it in terms of. I don't see Pedro as Reed Richards. That being said, I think this is the perfect casting that Marvel needs right now. I think with Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, some of these big stars stepping away, they kind of needed that star power. And I think you have a lot of cast within the MCU that is going to become huge stars. Iman Vellani, Simu, plenty of others. But I think adding like Pedro Pascal is one of the biggest names in Hollywood right now, with all of these huge properties he's been a part of recently. So I think it's almost stunt casting, but he's also a great actor. Like he he can play this role, I think. So
Well, we do know now because he's been cast, we know that the plot, he's going to have to reluctantly take care of a child. That's his thing.
that's true. That is sort of what happens in Pedro Pascal projects. So, although I guess, you know what? Nobody saw Wonder Woman 1984, so don't worry about it.
Okay. No, I'm just talking about Mando and Last
The
of
Last
Us.
of Us, yeah. Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, I like it. That was a long rumored casting as well. I'm not super familiar with a lot of her work aside from, what is the name of the Fast and Furious spinoff? Hobbs and Shaw. There you go. She's great for action. I can tell you that. She was fantastic in that. So Joseph Quinn, I'm a big Stranger Things fan. Eddie Munson, not my favorite character. I think a lot of people love Eddie a lot more than I do. I know Becca's a big Stranger Things fan as well. So she's
Which
probably
one is Eddie?
Eddie he was only in season 4.
Okay, she
Spoiler
liked
alert,
him.
he
He is
won't
like
be
the
in
Hellfire Club.
Yes,
thing.
he's the leader of the Hellfire Club.
Yeah, she liked him.
Yeah, he's a very popular character. Joseph Quinn was great in that role. This is a very different role, and I'm not familiar with his work outside of Stranger Things, so we'll see what he can do with that. And then the actor that I'm least familiar with in this this cast is Eben Moss-Bachrach, who I know is from The Bear, which I think you're going to see a lot of.
But not not Io.
Yeah, not Ayo Edebiri, which we'll talk about a little bit more too. But I think you're going to see a lot of character or actors from The Bear in big projects like this. So I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that casting as well. I did think it was kind of funny, as we will move into the talk about the art here now. But while we're talking about the thing, it's kind of funny that they have a picture of Ben Grimm, the astronaut, behind them as he's sitting there as the thing. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, it sounds like a contractual choice.
So yeah, what do you think about that artwork? That 60s style. Looks like we know that the movie is going to be set in the 60s at this point. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously my first thought was WandaVision, which makes sense
right.
because the director is from WandaVision. But no, I just thought that was interesting because I did not see that coming. I also want to make a note, the Marvel logo where it kind of has the like alternating design.
Yeah.
That's an homage to the Cinerama logo, which you can see on the Cinerama Dome in
Okay.
Hollywood. So that was kind of cool, stuck out to me. But yeah, I loved WandaVision. I am very interested in that idea of it being set potentially in the past or in a because we ran into this before when the WandaVision artwork came out, people said it's set in the 50s. And it's like, well, it's not really set in the 50s. It's set in a 50s aesthetic. So if they're setting it in a 60s aesthetic, I think that's interesting and cool. I don't actually care if it's the real 60s or not.
Right. No, very, very true. Good point. Matt Shackman, by the way, is that director who was coming over from WandaVision to now direct Fantastic Four. And I'm glad you brought up the Cinerama logo because every time I see that, I'm just immediately think Funko. Like every time I see it, I'm like, oh, Funko has Fantastic Four products. That's cool. Oh no, that's actually the logo for the movie. Got it.
Kind of looks like a few things, but I don't know if it's a direct homage. Maybe it's used in other things, but to me, if you look at the Cinerama logo and you look at that, that's what it is.
So I mentioned earlier that I have a theory that kind of ties in between Deadpool and this. And if this movie is in fact set in the 60s, how is it that the Fantastic Four have existed as superheroes, decades before the events of the MCU, and yet nobody has ever heard of them aside from Doctor Strange knowing that they charted in the 60s? And I think the answer comes to us from the Deadpool trailer. I think the TVA has been or is now pulling heroes from different time periods, different timelines as they, well, again, this is going to connect to another piece of news that we're going to have to talk about, but as they assemble heroes to combat Kang, who, they're watching those variants, they're keeping an eye on that multiversal war that's coming. So, go to another universe, grab Wade Wilson, go to this other universe, grab the Fantastic Four, and then you'll see them all get pulled into the same universe with Secret Wars and all of the stuff that happens out of that. So that's my thought on how this movie could be set in the 60s and then brought into the larger MCU. Anything else you want on Fantastic Four before we move on to another piece of news here?
The release date on that, did that change?
Yeah, my next point. Yeah, Thunderbolts. As a result, we also got some change in the schedule. Fantastic Four was pushed back from May 2nd to July 25th next year, and Thunderbolts moved up from that spot. July 25th now will be released on May 2nd. And while we're talking about both of these films too, I'll mention Eric Pearson, a familiar face for Marvel Studios. He's worked on Black Widow. He's worked on Thor Ragnarok. He has been brought on to work on the Fantastic Four script. And then Joanna Kalo, who is the showrunner for the previously mentioned The Bear, has been brought on to work on the Thunderbolts script. So I think that's a pretty good fit. I feel like the sort of gritty vibe kind of works with Thunderbolts. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, as we mentioned too, ironic that the showrunner for The Bear comes on to work on Thunderbolts as one of the stars, Ayo Edebiri, backs out because of scheduling conflicts. So,
that's the second time that's happened as well.
Is it?
The other person the person that dropped out immediately after we talked about them being on the project dropped out for scheduling conflicts too, I believe.
Oh, I thought you meant specifically with the showrunner taking over.
No, sorry. I meant people dropping out because of scheduling conflicts with this particular film.
I was going to say, once is a coincidence, twice might be a conspiracy here. All right, two other big pieces of news. So we'll try and go through this pretty quickly. But we got the trailer for X-Men 97 and the release date, March 20th, which really caught me off guard. Did not expect to see that coming so soon, or at least not so soon after the release date was announced. But yeah, trailer, what'd you think?
It was fun. It definitely felt like it's got that same quality. I also love the poster that they put out with all the VHS like lined up. That was cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea, and it's cool if they kind of like kept that Saturday morning cartoon look.
Yeah, they definitely updated the animation style as you would expect. It looks a little bit different, but the having the same voice cast is great. You get a little bit of an updated version of the theme song, which was really cool. We got Wolverine with energy claws. Gambit charges him up. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, there was a lot to love about this trailer. Fun little Easter egg in there. At one point, you get a newspaper going by. It's the Daily Bugle. And there's a little story at the top. It's about the Hellfire Gala. So a reference to current X-Men comics. And it is written by Eddie Brock with photos by Peter Parker. So some nods there to, I don't know. I think there's a lot of fans that would be really interested in a revival of that 90s Spider-Man series as well. So we'll see how X-Men 97 goes. But yeah, this trailer was exciting. Again, having the voice cast, the nostalgia hit so hard watching that trailer. So really excited for that. Again, March 20th on Disney Plus. Seems like they're doing an episodic, weekly episodic release as opposed to dropping a whole bunch at once or anything like that. But they haven't really said what that release schedule will be like. So
Benji's nodding.
So yes, it is an episodic weekly release. Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll be getting those weekly starting March 20th. I can't wait. Kyle, we have to talk off the air a little bit about how we're going to handle that with the podcast. But yeah, that's going to be fun to talk about. Another big piece of news and kind of the last one, but we've got a potential name change coming for Avengers: The Kang Dynasty. There's all the talk about the Jonathan Major stuff. I assumed they would recast the role. Now it seems like they might be looking to minimize the character, which is funny given his role in Quantumania, or completely remove him in totality, which would then obviously remove the Kang Dynasty title. What did you think about this? Because this one caught me off guard. Like I said, I thought they would recast and keep.
I don't think. I think they could still do both. I think you could still recast, but because of the attention it's got, you still might not want to make it more of a focus than you need to. So I think they could still recast and kind of downplay it while having a different title.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily think that changing the title means that they're not moving forward with the character at all, even though that's totally an option, as we've discussed. But yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
No, that is good. That's a good thought, and I hope that is the case. Like I said, I just want them to recast, and if I can just throw my casting choice out there, I would love to see John David Washington take over the role, star of The Creator and Tenet. Just throwing that out there. We might revisit this later in the future, but so yeah, I hope that is the case. Again, the name change doesn't mean much. Like you said, it could still follow that story. I know a lot of people are talking about like it being like Doom Wars or something like that, and they want Doom to be the big focus. I hope Marvel doesn't rush that. I want Doctor Doom done right. I want him to be held off until Secret Wars. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing with that. So yeah, one last piece of news before we jump into our games, and that is the biggest, most exciting Marvel news you could possibly have, and that is a new issue of It's Jeff is now on Marvel Unlimited. You can check out the Infinity comic again on Marvel Unlimited right now. I would say I read it, but it's an Infinity comic with no text really. It's pictures. So I looked at it, and if you haven't checked out It's Jeff, there are now 31 issues. You will love every single panel, and you'll burn through them in 20 minutes probably. But they're fantastic. Jeff the Land Shark, one of my favorite Marvel characters now. Anything else, Kyle, before we jump into our games or get into our draft here?
I don't think so.
All right. Let's get into, as soon as I find the drop for it, let's get into our draft.
What if I told you we were putting a team together? Assemble.
All right. So like I said at the top, and just because I know he would hate this, just the most special guest we could possibly have for an episode of Zzzax of Life. We've got, and to double down, Laughing Place CEO, Benji. Hey, Benji.
Hi. I was excited to see who the guest was.
I was gonna make a joke as to who the guest could be, but that might spoil a pick for the draft, so I will stay off of that. We are, we talked a lot about the Fantastic Four cast today, so we wanted to draft the best Marvel casting choices, and we are not limited to just the MCU. We are expanding to everything, which opens the door to some really interesting choice. And I'm curious to see what random curveball Kyle throws at us from this one. I'm trying to.
I don't think I'm the wild card. We discussed off air what we think Benji's going to draft, so we'll see.
All right. So, Benji, you have done this I don't know how many times. When was the last time we had you on, by the way? What was the last? Do you remember what you drafted?
It was a bit ago.
I know we did one with soundtracks and scores that you were on. That might have been the most recent one. And that could have been yesterday. It could have been 3 years ago based on when our Fantastic Four fan cast was. Just no idea anymore. So you know how this works, though. We are going to be doing a snake draft. Do you want to pick first, second, or third?
I want to pick third.
Yeah, that actually is kind of where I was at with this, too. I feel like I would want the third pick, which means, Kyle, you pick first between the two of us this week. Okay. This week, as if we do these weekly anymore. But so you will have the first pick, which is kind of interesting. I'm really curious to see where you go here.
Hard. Yeah, I have like 3 leaders in the clubhouse. All right.
I feel like I have just to stall for you a little bit, but I feel like I have what would be my 101. But again, I think if I had the choice, I probably would have done what Benji did and picked third. But
Yeah.
so
No,
you
I
got
agree
stuck.
with that. I think there's I'm going to narrow it down to two answers. One of them would be, just kind of when you're talking about the MCU would be the answer. But I think if you're expanding it out of that and the fact that they screwed it up the first time and then fixed it, I'm taking Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool.
Yeah. That is high on my list and a good choice. And I think what's funniest about that is he basically casted himself. Like he just made himself Deadpool in real life, and then that's how it happened. So.
And I'll say when I saw, so I might have mentioned this before. The world premiere of X-Men Origins Wolverine was at a theater chain that I worked at in Tempe, and I worked the world premiere. I got to screen the movie before the world premiere, and Ryan Reynolds was my favorite part of that. I knew nothing about Deadpool, but his 5 minutes in the beginning was my favorite part of it. And so it's funny that that became such a thing that people hated the rest of what they did to that character. And then the fact that it, got revived and they had to leak the footage to get the movie made. And then it became this huge hit. It's just so interesting to me. And I think it has a lot to do with not just the character, but Ryan's portrayal of it. So that's why it's my number one pick.
Yeah, it's worthy of the number one pick. And also go watch Deadpool 2, please.
Yeah. You know what? You just hurt my argument by bringing that back up.
Benji, you've seen both Deadpool movies, right?
I mean, so I've seen Deadpool 1, and I think I saw Once Upon a Deadpool. I don't know that I saw Deadpool 2.
Okay, so you did. You just saw it sort of turned down. Yeah. That's fair.
With Fred Savage in between.
Right.
Because Fred Savage makes everything better except HR departments.
That had moments though that it was worth seeing that way too. So it was pretty funny. Okay, so I am up now, and I will take. There's other ones that I want, but I will take what I think would have been my 101, and I think it was probably the 101 for most people. I'm going to take Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Yep, that was the one that I was obviously flailing on, deciding between the two.
Yeah, and I think the Ryan Reynolds pick is more fun, but I a lot of people are immediately, there was I forget what award show it was back in probably 2010 or something, but Robert Downey Jr. got up on stage and talked for a little bit, and somebody retweeted it and was like, Tony Stark does an amazing Robert Downey Jr. impression. He like Ryan Reynolds, he was that character in real life for a long time. So I think they're synonymous at this point. Benji, you chose to pick third. Clearly you had,
So I have a question. We pick 4?
We picked 4 total, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to pick 2 that I think are, so I have 2 that I think are more common and 2 that I think are hidden gems. So I'm going to go with the 2 that I think are more common. I'm going to go with Patrick Stewart as Professor X.
Yep. I
think I don't know if I have to say much about why, but
no, he really is what's funny is I can't remember. X-Men was 2000, so it was a long time ago at this point, but I can't remember hearing about the casting of Charles Xavier. Again, that's just who he is to me, of Patrick Stewart. I do remember hearing about Hugh Jackman, and it was just they kind of got sort of a nobody to play Wolverine, which is an interesting choice. But Patrick Stewart, I think everyone was just that's Charles Xavier.
Yeah, I don't think it was no one was it wasn't even fan casting. It was just there was
there was no decision.
Wizard Magazine used to do that thing where they take a comic and then they would fan cast it basically. I mean, before the internet, and it was I just remember internet was fairly new but around when, and it was just there was no, it was just yeah, of course it's Picard. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna pick the most famous bald guy in the world, whatever.
And I mean, we couldn't have asked him to do that role any better either. He was absolutely perfect. So
I mean, through the whole run. I mean, obviously in that original trilogy. I mean, the first 2, and then in Logan, even having some fun in Multiverse of Madness. So
Kyle, was that the
Stewart.
last one? Was that the last one of your big three there, Charles or Patrick?
It probably should have been, but no, there was another one.
Okay.
But also Patrick Stewart, great commercial during the big game.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
During
Even though we all saw it
the
2 weeks
Super
before
Bowl,
that.
we're journalists. Like we're not like licensing.
Right.
Trying to sell anything.
Just had to have fun with it.
And calling us journalists might be a stretch, but I'm going to go number 2, and I don't know that it's aged as well. Well, no pun intended, but it was just perfect casting when it happened. But Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / Spider-Man.
Yeah, I like it. He wasn't on my list just because I'm not even sure who my favorite Spider-Man is anymore, and it was such a hard decision to make. Like, I feel like Tobey Maguire is probably the best Peter Parker, whereas Andrew Garfield was, not that Kyle, not that Tobey Maguire. I feel like Andrew Garfield was a better Spider-Man as Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, if that makes sense. And then
Tom Holland, I don't know that you could have had Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Peter Parker or Spider-Man without Tobey. Like, you needed the more nerdy version to kind of satisfy that sort of thing, and then you could kind of derivative. Like, I mean, I love Tom Holland too, but he wouldn't have been the best sort of, like, especially in the 90s. And I'm kind of taking the time it occurred into consideration here. But you kind of wanted that, like, meekness that the other two, I think, kind of underplayed because they didn't have to anymore.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a really good pick. Again, one that I didn't have on my list just because it was too hard of a decision to make. And now I have a really hard decision to make because I thought you were going to take one of these two, and I have two that I have to decide here. And I kind of have to play the game. I think there's a chance one of them gets past Kyle and gets back to me in the third round here.
Maybe. There's a lot of, I'll say, like, really good I'm looking at my list, and even if I'm not going to be heartbroken with whatever you take, because I have some other bangers right behind.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hope that one of them comes back to me, and I'm gonna take one that I'm almost certain would not. I'm gonna take Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan. I think that's I think they found Kamala Khan in real life. I don't think they casted Iman Vellani. I think they went and found the character existing in the real world. And
one of the coolest Marvel moments I had was I was at the fan event at the LCAP for the Marvels, and it was right. The strike had already, so there was no press before this moment. Basically, it was, I want to say, the same week, and so she was so excited to be able to talk about the movie because of all the weirdness, and she was so excited, and it was really cool to see her. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't want to say she's not a good actress, but she doesn't have to act that much, I think, in terms of to be that character. It's more fun than and that's a testament to her, not any sort of skill set. But yeah.
No, and it's a weird, like, sort of place to be in because I'm excited to see where her career goes after this, but I never want to see her as anyone else other than Kamala Khan. So
yeah, you don't want to see her do like the gritty drama where she's like murdered 3 people. Yeah.
Right. Although I still kind of do, in a weird way. But no, she's just absolutely perfect. And, like we talked about earlier, she's the best part of the assembled, so like her energy is just infectious, and she's so much fun to watch. So Iman Vellani is my second pick. And now, Kyle, I get to see if you take the one that I want here.
We'll see. Probably not. So I will go ahead and take the one that was the third one on my list, although Iman was also very high. I'm realizing as I'm planning out my next picks that there's a little bit of like 2 different themes going on here. But my next one, I'm going to take J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, that was the one. That was the one. And because Benji took Tobey Maguire, I was like, should I go with that because it's going to be on his mind? But he's not going to let Iman Vellani go. J.K. Simmons, to the point where they couldn't recast the character for a
exactly.
New
so you have, this is the second time I've taken someone that first of all starts outside of the MCU and then comes into the MCU. And maybe that happens with my third pick, Kelsey Grammer as Beast.
Ooh, that was not on my list, and it should have been. That was an oversight on my part because he is like, I mean, the voice is just that's Hank McCoy to me.
Yeah. And I love Frasier, so that oh dear God, there's that too. So there's a Disney connection.
Yeah, and I mean, and if there's one thing he can do, it's stand up and keep his back.
Let's
Get that reference, you're old.
Not have him accept any awards for anything Marvel wins in the near future.
As long as it's not on a stage with weird star cutouts, he'll be fine. It's not his fault. It's a weird stage and it was dark. And he apologizes for his language, even though he didn't say anything bad. He managed to not swear. It's very impressive in hindsight.
Oh, I didn't realize Kyle was such a Kelsey Grammer apologist. And yeah, we talked about the Marvels a little bit. So, I mean, spoiler alert, but his, reprisal of that role, super exciting. Can't wait to see if we get more of him in the future. Okay, now I am back up here, and this is a tough spot now because the one that I want next, I think almost definitely gets past Benji and comes back to me in the fourth. Man, this is
I wonder
tough.
if it's the one that I was thinking about and would have taken just to upset you, but it wasn't worth it to me.
Yeah, it probably is that one then. But yeah, I'm gonna go with, I mentioned I'm not taking Hugh Jackman, but I mentioned him sort of being a relatively unknown at the time that he was cast in such an iconic role, and I'm gonna go with that same school of thought. And I'm going to take Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I think it would be hard to picture anyone else playing that role at this point. He's obviously turned a corner with the character and really made him his own. So yeah, Chris Hemsworth as Thor is going to be my third pick.
Sorry, if I may, breaking the fourth wall, as it were. It's always good when you get your first comment 45 minutes into the stream.
Well, hello, Chilling with Cameron. Thanks for joining us. We are in the middle of a draft of the best
So
Marvel.
what's his name? He's Chilling with Cameron.
It's a good question.
I have a question.
All right, Benji, back to you to close out your draft with back-to-back picks here. You've got Patrick Stewart and Tobey Maguire going. I guess I would say no MCU to this point, although Charles Xavier has shown up in the MCU at this point. So kind of, and so is Tobey Maguire.
I've got two very unconventional picks.
Okay, I kind of have an idea of where you're going with at least one of them.
So one of them's not from a project I don't believe has been released yet.
Oh,
but I'm gonna go with Peggy, who you may have seen glimpses of in the trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine. She plays Dogpool.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No, we all knew it.
Not Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, but you're going
No.
The dog as Dogpool.
Right.
Well, Mac,
I went with the attractive
the over.
Yeah, the over under was set at 1.5. So let's see if it hits here. So Peggy the dog.
I just feel, I haven't seen her full performance, but she seems to really embrace the role. And
you liked that photo that they shared on Instagram with
I can see
letting it all hang out.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, by the way, there are actually, I think, a couple of stories at this point on laughingplace.com of Dogpool, who will show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. So that is Benji's choice is Peggy the dog as Dogpool. And your fourth pick?
My fourth pick. What's that?
Fourth and final pick. So closing out your draft here.
So there's so many people who I could have picked.
We're gonna hit the under.
What's that?
I said we're gonna hit the under. If you said there's so many people who you could have picked.
There is. I feel that Catherine Hahn as Agatha, but not hasn't quite really, I think, embraced fully, shown her what she can do with that role yet. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with a character so popular you can only see him in a deleted scene.
Wow. Okay.
From Avengers Endgame. However, my understanding is that this was to get perfect casting. Right?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to go with a deleted scene from Avengers Endgame with Reginald Vell Johnson as Chief.
Yeah. Is that his character's name was just Chief?
I don't know that they named him, but he was some sort of police emergency services chief, maybe fire chief.
Reginald Bell
Die
Johnson
Hard?
as his
That's
character
not one of
in
them.
all of his other projects, basically.
Yeah, it's the role he was born to play.
I think it's the only role he played. Yeah, if you're not familiar, there is a deleted scene from Avengers Endgame that kind of sets up Smart Hulk, because he was introduced in a very different way, where he is like jumping into action and conversing briefly with a police chief, I guess police chief, who was played by Reginald Bell Johnson. So there you go. I like it. I mean, you're not wrong. It's perfect casting. It's his role. So, all right. My fourth pick then.
I hope I didn't take it from anyone else, but
no, he was, surprisingly not on my list. I did have another one on my list that I thought for sure you were going to take, but we'll talk about those in a little bit. I will take my fourth pick here, which is almost definitely the one that Kyle threatened to steal from me, mostly because I mentioned it, I think, on the last episode that we did here, and that's going to be Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk.
Yep, that was it.
Now you have not gone back and watched Daredevil since then, have you?
No, even though you have and told me how much I need to watch it because you forgot how good it was.
It is. I mean, it's hard to compare it to a lot of the MCU stuff, but it might be, it's top tier, at least as far as my favorite Marvel projects in general. This, especially season 2, when the Punisher gets introduced, it's so good. And Vincent D'Onofrio crushes that role. And he has become one of those actors to me that is an absolute chameleon. And you see him in other movies and shows and things. I just watched Dumb Money, and he pops up, and I was like, wait, who is that? I know that actor. And Jess goes, that's Vincent D'Onofrio. I was like, oh wow, that's he blows my mind in the way that he transforms himself. And he is Wilson Fisk. Like, he just fits the role perfectly, absolutely crushes it. In both Daredevil and Echo now, and Hawkeye, of course, the smaller role he has in that too. But yeah,
he also portrayed Thor.
Yep. Did he really? Wait, what?
In the play of
No, in Adventures in Babysitting.
Oh, okay.
I mean, kind of.
not the play.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure which movie you were talking about at that point, but yeah. Also in Kyle's favorite Marvel movie, Men in Black. So
and Law and Order, Criminal Intent.
I think Benji's just pulled up his IMDb at this point, but
that's what I knew him from. That's where that's where I knew his name was. Vincent D'Onofrio. He was on Law and Order every week back in the '90s when everyone watched Law and Order because we didn't have anything to stream. And
All in the Game says, would be nice to have Fisk in a movie. I agree. Although I think his next project is going to be another series, with Daredevil Born Again. So,
I mean, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing for him to show up in like Thunderbolts or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thunderbolts would be a great fit, which I guess at this point is almost definitely coming before Daredevil Born Again. So, Kyle,
still sooner than Ironheart.
Yes, that's a very good point. Everything needs to be sooner than Ironheart.
Well, that kid would be on like AARP by the time they.
All right, so sorry, Kyle. Go ahead and close out our draft here.
Surprising ones available.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of great ones out there still.
But I'm gonna choose my weirdo pick and close out my draft with no one who actually started in the. Oh, that's not true. This one actually did start in the MCU and did a different jump. This is my weirdo pick. Donald Glover as Prowler.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
Because started in Homecoming and then pops up in Across the Spider-Verse. Or Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, very good point. He unfortunately
and just the whole story like leading up to why he is that character, like that's a part of it for me too, obviously.
That's fair, because we are drafting the best casting choices, and this was a good choice to put him almost as a way to satisfy the fans, is getting him into this universe.
And then to pay it off further in a mind-bending way by putting him in Across the Spider-Verse. I think that gets credit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is a good sneaky last pick there. Benji, anybody left on your list? Any honorable mentions there?
I mean, I think there's a lot of great casting in the MCU. I mean, I think Paul Rudd was fantastic as Scott Lang, and all of the Cassies have been
second
great.
Cassie.
But
second one, the one from Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. Second Cassie has one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU, and she gets
You're not wrong.
It's actually unfair.
It is a great scene.
Sorry,
I thought Anthony did a great job.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna take Sparky, and I figured you would know the dog's name, or Cosmos.
Well, I had Jolt, who plays Lucky the pizza dog, on my list.
Oh yeah.
I could have just gone all dog.
We thought you were going to. Like I said, the over/under was set at 1.5 as to how many dogs we drafted.
The doorman line is what we call
it. Now I kind of regret my choices. I should have just gone all dog.
Kyle, who was left on your list?
I had Julia Louis-Dreyfus just because I like Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Haley Steinfeld as either
Also
Kate
on my
Bishop or as Gowanda. And then also I had John Krasinski as disposable Reed Richards.
Yeah, that is, you have to put disposable there in front of it though. That is another like satisfying fan, casting. I had Chadwick Boseman on my list.
I thought about that too, but it made me sad.
That's fair. Haley Steinfeld, like I said, was on my list. Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is on his way to that RDJ as Tony Stark thing. They're the same person.
You forget that he's British.
Yeah, he does a good job of that.
Like
You're
Robert
right.
Downey Jr. is just Robert Downey Jr., but like not only is Benedict Cumberbatch Doctor Strange, but then is also doing a completely different accent to where he's not the same person.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like House.
Speaking of, I guess he still has the kind of an accent here. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, fantastic as well. Anthony Hopkins as Odin, I think is like, that's, sort of almost on Charles Xavier level. Like, who else are you going to cast to play Odin? And then I have Kevin Bacon as himself. He nailed it. Did a great job. And then my Aunt May is Rosemary Harris. That's who Aunt May is to me. I love Marissa Tomei, but she's just way too young to be Aunt May. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's another kind of thing where it's like, it's okay because, they already went the sort of conventional route that they can kind of mix it up. But yeah, absolutely. She was Aunt May. I mean, despite the fact it never answers the question, how come Peter Parker's aunt is like her great grandmother's age? But it's just what we've been seeing in the comics forever. So
comics, the animated series, Aunt May was always roughly in her early 80s at some point.
It's so Peter Parker's mom or dad, I don't know what side of the family they come from, must have like been an accident because like they had the child and then 40 years later they had another one.
My great uncle, I just called uncle and didn't even really think about the fact that he was really my great uncle until he passed away. So I think maybe it's his great aunt and they just call
in a Gravity Falls they call that a grunkle.
I didn't know if it was because he was the great uncle or because he was grumpy.
Ooh. Is it Grumpy Uncle?
Have you ever seen Gravity Falls? Yeah, Stan is very Stanley Pines. Not to be confused with Stanford Pines.
Or with Stan Lee.
That too.
Benji, thank you so much for joining us for another fun draft. Normally, this is where I ask our guest, what do you have going on? But I guess what you have going on is Laughing Place. Like as
payroll.
Yeah, you get to handle all the fun stuff, right?
I know.
But he's not the CEO.
I'm also the lowest paid person on the team, so
Benji is in charge of mergers and acquisitions, actually.
And then I don't know. Like I got this email from Nelson Peltz, and he wants to get involved. And I'm just not really in the mood. So
did he beg you?
That sounds like a topic for a different LP podcast that hasn't happened in quite a while.
I also want to give a shout out to Benji
he's 2 in. We'll see if he has any more. He's been writing a daily kind of like newsletter, but in the form of a post. And in one of them, he was wondering what's going on with Ironheart.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. Hopefully we will see that sooner rather than later. But yeah,
It's just weird to see something at an expo nearly 2 years ago and not even have a release and no, basically it's not coming out this year. So by the time it comes out,
Right.
at minimum, it will have been 3 years. That's weird, right?
The girl will be ready to retire.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, it must be really bad.
Who knows? There's got to be something else to it because they've, they clearly didn't have a whole lot of faith in Echo the way that they dropped that all at once, and yet they don't seem to be willing to do that with this. So, yeah, we would have talked more about Ironheart in the news, except for the fact that there really isn't any news. It's just that it's still not on the schedule. So yeah, it's definitely something weird going on there. Well, thank you again, Benji. And we'll be sure to have you back on for as soon as they can find an all dog related draft, which I think we actually may have already done.
Have you read Marvel Unleashed?
I haven't, and I think you recommended that last time too. I have read quote Jeff Land, or it's Jeff, the new issue.
Oh, do you see that there's a new what do they call it? Infinity Comics?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The new Infinity comic dropped today on Marvel Unlimited.
It was quite good.
I just need to naturally plug that as much as I can in this episode. So, all right, thank you, Benji. I'm going to close things out here. We don't know, I guess, when we're going to be back right now because again,
probably
this was
March. We'll probably do something for.
Yeah, March 20th again is when X-Men 97 will debut on Disney Plus. Yeah, aside from that, we've got some time. We got a little bit of a break, unless who knows? Maybe they announced the casting for 6 different movies between now and then, and we have to jump on and do another special episode.
We could do another event at the El Capitan on a random Tuesday.
Yeah, you never know. The world of Marvel can always be exciting and keep you on your toes. So
Nelson Peltz has some ideas. Ike Perlmutter behind him. He's going to use those shares. We're gonna get this thing back on track.
Going in the wrong direction, but on a track.
I didn't say the track was going.
All right. Anything else, Kyle, before we wrap things up? It's Friday right now, so Laughing Place YouTube channel doesn't have a whole lot going on for the rest of the day. I think we have Disney Trivia Live tomorrow night.
Who knows?
So stay
if not,
tuned.
maybe they'll have vacation slides.
Stay tuned to the Laughing Place YouTube channel. Ring the bell so you get notifications when we do go live. And check out laughingplace.com for all your latest Marvel and Disney news in general. And aside from that, we will see you all next month, I suppose.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.